Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Biology. What's your BSA score? The Biology Skills Assessment is the only verified skills metric endorsed by the NAIA, NJCAA, and a growing number of NCAA coaches to discover and develop the best talent for your team. This 4-minute, 40-shot test can be taken free today on the Biology mobile app. Elevate your game. Based on how you come about your information for the post that you put out, I would imagine your daily habits, you have a routine. I'm always fascinated with morning routines, daily routines. So what habits set you up for success?
There's an acronym out that was by a guy who wrote The Miracle Morning. And he got into a terrible accident, was in an ICU unit essentially for a year. And so he wrote about touching all bases, and he created an acronym, and the acronym is SAVERS. And basically it touches all those mental and physical, spiritual, even emotional areas that you try to set the stage for. In green lights, they talk about, setting your day the night before. Everybody's different, but like what I try to do in SAVERS, number one is silence. And that is meaning to meditate. And you don't have to do it in a hokey way or a goofy way, but pick a time frame that works for you where you can actually reflect and think. Mr. Rogers said that we have a noisy world. What are you doing to counter the noise in your life so that you actually take a minute, 5 minutes, 18 minutes to think about what you're going to do and how you want to do it and how you process information. So anyway, I'm usually up sometimes at 3:30 in the morning or 4, right in that window. And so I try to sit on the S and think. I go to Google. There are over 1,000 meditative things that you can do where you can be led. And I happen to pick one that's 18 minutes. So that's A, for me, or S. And then A is affirmation. Think positive, talk positive. And finally, the most powerful is act positive. Your actions speak for you. And so I go through a set of, for me, 10 of just over and over planting the seed of affirmations. I like the same affirmations. Some people like different affirmations. Some people connect it to religion. Some people don't. That's fine. Whatever doorway you have to walk through to plant the seed, because there's so much negative in our lives. If you pay attention to the global plights of the world, if you walk and you did that, well, then how are you going to cleanse yourself so that you can engage in people and be a source of energy? John Gordon, the energy bus, all of that stuff, so that you have an aura of positivity, because ultimately you have to compete against negative. And so affirmations are a great way to do that. V on SAVERS is visualization. I try to visualize how I'm going to move through a particular day and who I am and what I want to be. And if I don't have the image, how can anybody else have the image? So visualization and creating a picture. Can you create red when you close your eyes? Can you create green or orange? A lot of people can't do that, and it just takes repetition. So visualization and seeing where you're going is so important. Then we go to E, exercise. So let's say you're on the couch, you're going through your SAVERS, and you pop down and you do 10 push-ups. Well, that's 10 more than you would have done, because exercise can be overwhelming for people. And a lot of people get hurt when they go from couch potatoes to a program. And I think it's really important that little bites of the apple are important in a given day, because there are profound questions in a person's life. Why do I exist? What's my purpose? And I think that they're just these huge mountains. And David Brooks talks about it in his book, The Second Mountain, Chapter 3. He talks about graduate speakers. And here comes this guy or this young lady with a huge resume, and it's sterling, and it's from Harvard, and they run their own company, and they've done these remarkable things, and they're standing up there telling, let's say, 1,200 students, be you, slay the world, live your dream. That's ridiculous. And I totally agree with him on that, because if you're sitting there, you're scared to death, you don't know what you're going to do. And now you've got a speaker up there who's been there, done that. And they're going, okay, go ahead and climb Everest. Well, Everest is climbed bit by bit in its preparation. So instead, I think it's really important that in your exercise, that you just do something, and then it can work itself to something bigger and bolder and brighter. And that's the same thing. If I were going to speak at a graduation, it would be about what to do over the next month, because I have 3 children. They all sat there for graduation, and I know what it was like to be with them that night. And the pupils were as big as the moon. And you could just tell they were like, oh my God, now I have to be legitimate. I have to, work for a living. I have to do these things. It's more serious than 4 years of college, which we know is an expansive time in your life. It's trial and error. You get to not be accountable for your philosophy. You can say anything in English class and really not be in a hard way accountable in terms of the green stuff, money. How am I going to pay my bills? So anyway, exercise is a really important cathartic vehicle also to take care of your hardware. And because if you don't do it early and you try and get it late, you're in all kinds of trouble. So then we, go again, SAVERS, S-A-V-E-R, reading. I am a voracious, eclectic, ADH reader, New Yorker, The Atlantic, David Brooks, Outliers, and Gladwell. And then I'll go from Gladwell and I'll slalom all over the place. And I'm not, all right, let's sit down and just hammer out one book for 3 days and then go to the next. I like to pay attention to Twitter. I like to pay attention to Instagram, because that gives me a pulse of youth. I mean, I'm not, I want to know about Tinder. I want to know about all the social media that's coming by 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, because they're going to be there. And instead of condemning them for these mediums, I don't see them as agents of evil. I see them as something that has to be disciplined, like your phone. No phone zone at dinner is a good, sound principle. And I go through airports all the time and I see people with their head downs, not communicating. Okay, now all of a sudden I cascade into negativity about, look at all these people, well, what I'm not doing. That's garbage. What I want to do is say, okay, if that's the challenge, how do we move an 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old to a place, or even an adult, where I say, hey, the phone's so cool. Okay, and let's look at this, because I don't want to set myself apart. And even if I want to be someone who's perceived as disciplined, I still want to be able to communicate with somebody that does something that I don't do, and then see if I have a collective responsibility to be the leader, how I could move them where I'm not turning them off before I actually want to discipline them. I mean, it's great to throw Listerine on somebody's head, but I don't know that that's going to, leave you with being able to captivate an audience. And so anyway, getting back to topic and come back to earth with my point is that if I like to read, and I like to read a lot of different things and go forward and then use it as a piece of clay and then shape it into something beautiful. And then finally, scribing, journaling. I have a journal behind me. I have my journal here in terms of my daily calendar. It works for me. I have a system. But being a writer, to stay in shape, because what writing does, and when you talk about the Twitter and the characters that you have to work, I don't know, it's 145 or whatever it is now. But that is like a haiku. And the great thing about trying to write a haiku is that you have a formula that you have to follow, 575, And then also is that you have to use the seasons in juxtaposition with each other, and you have to use oxymorons in a way where, as I say, more oxy than moron with me, more moron. But my point is that you have to. It makes you be disciplined with an articulation, because in the pro level, in the NBA, economy of words is really important, and they want to do and everything that once they leave the building in 90 minutes, 120, maybe they come back for some shooting, but they really want the basketball part of it, because that's their existence and that's how they make money and that's how they survive. They don't want you to break into a speech on religion or morals or values. Now, you can get there, but you have to enter there much later on the platform of trust. Maybe a guy's having a trouble with his wife or kids or whatever, and they need an ear. And then maybe they'll ask you a question where you can impart some wisdom because you're, like me, older, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, the acronym is SAVERS. It's how I did it this morning. I got up early and went downstairs. I'm in a hotel, went to the lobby and got everything set. Here's, you got to live what you're talking about. Here it is.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to reach back here and grab my journal.
Yeah.
And these are just these books, and I put them in my backpack. I'm a backpack guy, and here's my journal, and I open up my journal and I flip through the pages, and it's dated, and then I write little paragraphs, maybe 5 at the most, and then I keep these and throw these in a Tupperware box. And then if I need to go back to them, I have a record. I use a Franklin Planner system that is my own, that I've modified. And then if you tell people what you do, you start to overwhelm them. And then in this podcast, I'm trying to tell you everything in a short period of time, and you lose your audience. But I'm also not going to dumb down. I'm not going to say, well, I want to be Forrest Gump-like and be cute and witty. And then all of a sudden I'm trying to be something I'm not in this podcast. I would rather be who I am and say, hey, get a system of discipline. And when somebody says you get up at 3:30 in the morning or 4, I don't want to apologize for doing that. I don't want somebody to say, well, I hear about sleep deprivation or whatever. I've been living this my entire life. And I tell my wife, don't be worried about my health or what I'm doing, because I've been hitting this rock my entire life. And so I'm not going to modify or all of a sudden not enjoy a 16 to 18 hour day because somebody else isn't, or some doctor's telling me that, ultimately sleep deprivation is going to kick my ass when I've been kicking its ass my whole life, like, hey, shut up. So, back to the acronym of SAVERS, it works for me. It's called The Miracle Morning. I think it's by a guy named Elrod. You can look it up on Google, get the book. It's a short little pamphlet, and it's dynamic. It's wonderful. He has a great story about his life and how he survived a terrible crash and how he came upon SAVERS. I use it. It works for me. There you go.
Okay. So Coach, that was incredible. And I'm so thankful that you didn't hold anything back, because the personal reason for starting this podcast is to get to sit across from someone like you and learn everything, not the dumbed down version. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I wrote down some questions while you were going through to ask. Is that all right?
Oh, it's awesome. And you go wherever you want, and I'll do my best to answer them in a shorter way than what I just did.
No, sir. I mean, I love it. 3:30 to 4 o'clock. Is that something natural for you? You've always been like that, able to get up early, and then also what time you get into bed?
Always. And then the older I've gotten, the earlier I get into bed, but I don't have a program time. Sometimes my wife wants to talk, and so I'll stay up later. We had friends here at the hotel, so we had dinner, and then we stayed out and in the lobby actually, and had a great conversation. And it lasted. I knew I was tired, but I don't know. Sometimes in the NBA you have film to do, and so you're up late, but I operate on about 4 hours of sleep, and that's who I am.
Yeah.
And then I love a nap, And so I'll take a 20-minute to 30-minute nap in a given day, and I'll just close my door to the office. I'll curl up in a corner. I don't care where I'm at. I can nod off quickly,
Oh,
get that 20 minutes,
that's
and then come
good.
right back. And so I like that. And I try to do that, habitually, and it works for me. But whatever works for anybody in terms of sleep patterns, I'm fine. I just, some people obsess over it. And my point is that if the wick is going to burn out because I did it that way, then let her burn. I don't care. And that's, everybody makes choices. I'll own my choice, and so I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, but the amount
Yeah, so
of
I'm up 3:34. I wander around sometimes if it's, I don't want to have a coffee before 3, so sometimes I get up at 2 and I'll read for an hour, and then I go back to sleep, and I'll get up at 5. So it's a sliding scale in there, and I feel it, but I immediately go to my phone mostly to read the New Yorker. The New Yorker's hard read because they're long articles, they're great writers. And now, over the last 2 years, New Yorkers made some of their writers shorten their articles. Thank God. But and I think the New Yorker is delicious because of the talent of the writers. The content, somebody can say, and they're uber conservative, that's a socialistic whatever. Okay, fine. Then I'll slide over to the Wall Street Journal, and read something from the Wall Street Journal, and then I'll go to the Washington Post or whatever it is, because what I'm looking for me is content and style of writing. And then I'm looking for power words. If you read a book and you read the first sentence and the last sentence and you left the middle of the paragraph alone, you could pretty much get where the author is heading. This is all by being an English major. So my point is knowing how to read and dissecting and understanding what the author is trying to get across. I can pretty much skim and then go back if it interests me and dig into what they're writing. But if a book bores me in the first 2 chapters, I'm probably not going to read it. It's their job to catch me. I don't have to catch that book. Oh yeah, page 155, and it started out, it was really good at 155.
It'll really catch you. It'll really catch you
Right.
3/4 of the
I'm
way
going,
through.
hey man, give your best in the first 2 chapters. Don't BS around. Let's get to it. And that's like if you're going to a clinic, you better come out there with big energy, snap them hard, and go with what you've got, and be, interesting. Don't be nervous. Just give them your heart and go forward.
I love the nugget that you gave about using social media to know other platforms and to connect with the youth. And I was thinking, as a 40-year-old coach that is already feeling the gap between me as a high school coach and what my
What will
players are
bridge the
into.
gap? What'll bridge the gap? Whomever your audience is, ask them who their heroes are, basketball wise, or outside that box. Because what happens when you turn 40, 35, 30, and it happens this fast, is you're using Curry as your example. That's not relevant to a 12-year-old. They may have someone like Ja as their hero, and Ja is vibrant, and here he comes. He's an explosion in shoes. He's a bouquet of, did he just say that? And you go, oh my God. But my point is that we all of a sudden date ourselves by the examples that we're using. All of us, guilty as charged. But what I try to do is stay relevant, and Twitter allows you to see the trends of the language that the youth is using, because when you piggyback on their language, you can walk right into their heart. You can walk right into their mind. They'll let you in. But you want to get irrelevant or start talking old school stuff. Old school is cool, but you have to wait and be more patient as you age to get there. That's all. They want truth. They want say as I do, not as I say kind of thing. I mean, they want you to do as you say. They want your actions, because they've seen so much heartbreaking leadership that is behind the scenes, tippy-toeing around, not living the life that they said purported. And it goes time and again. And I don't care what, avenue, corporate or religion or
Yeah.
whatever, you've got a lot of creeping going on. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
you just, kids want a little bit of that authentic, they want a lot of it actually. But again, language is everything. Music, kids love music. You don't have to say, hey, I'm this or I'm that. I really like that. You don't have to be fake about it. But if you can drop something, in terms of the latest and greatest for them, or you say, who do you listen to? Let me have a piece of that. Okay. And now you say, what about that do you like? Then you're going to learn a lot about who they are when they say what they like or dislike. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to
You
say,
turn it,
hey,
you
I'm going
turn
to
it back around to being about them, not about the genre, not about the artist, and not about what their political ideals are. It's, you take it back to what it makes the kids feel and think. And like you said, it's a great door to walk through. But I think a lot of
yeah.
coaches, and I'm guilty of it, I shut that door. I'm not
Well,
interested. I don't want to know.
here's an example of the greats. Bill Parcells had a guy, Brian Cox, that he took when he was with the Jets, and Brian had been irreverent towards other coaches, and so he sits down, and part of the story, which is in the book, Parcells' book, is he says, and then he stopped himself and he said, "What's your hobby?" And Cox said, "The ponies," and he said, "Oh, okay, I like the ponies too." All of a sudden, Cox looks at him, and then they get into this conversation about the ponies and A, B, and C. Well, he found uncommon objects. They say, the psychologist says, when the child has been abused, never go directly at them. Go to the sandbox, sit in the other corner, and see how they move, what item they're touching. Let's say they pick up a plastic shovel. At some point in time, you have to move yourself to that plastic shovel and start digging with them in the sandbox. And through that shovel, you will be able to get to the transgression, but you can't go to them directly. So
Hmm.
the point of the communication is exactly what you said, Matt. Go to the genre, go to their interest, find something where it's neutral, not your power zone, not necessarily their power zone, but something where you can move to that you have something in common. Everybody must eat. It is primal. So a great thing to do is meet somewhere, not in your office, outside, that's neutral, and bring some food, anything, and it could be just straight candy. I've had a couple players who just eat nothing but sweet tarts and Reese's and candy bars and stuff like that. Well, okay, bring that to the conversation and say, hey, I thought you might want this, and then it begins to open the door to where you want to head.
It's
So
simple.
you've nailed it. Yeah,
It's simple,
yeah,
but I think the goal, hopefully the goal of all of us, is to be transformational. But then
yes,
because
yes,
basketball, I know you're the same way. I mean, we love it and we're competitive
yes,
and we want to be great and
yeah.
excellent at what we're doing. But it's so easy for it just to be all about that. I don't care what level you're at, all about basketball. But some of the simple tips you just gave are ways for us to open those doors to the communication that we want. I think deep down we want with them. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
You bet.
How much time do you spend each day reading? Because I am trying to be a better reader, but it's a time thing sometimes.
Um, I would tell anybody who doesn't consider themselves, not you, but a reader, that forget the clock. Read a page, read a line of Twitter,
Kind of like
and
working
then
out. Just start, do something.
just start a little bit at a time and then bring them along. And then also is the other problem in terms of shutting the door to people who are not necessarily great readers or don't read a lot, is find out their interest level of what interests them and go get that piece of material that, hey, I thought you would want this, and it's not your interest, and it's not didactic. It's more them, and then you'll be able to. It's like being in the wilderness, and you say, okay, what items do I need in order to start a fire? And those concepts and precepts are always the same, in terms of just getting that spark. You're going to need a certain kind of material if you don't have a lighter. Okay, what can I do? What rocks can I use that'll actually spark onto this dry grass? You can't do it with wet grass. So anyway, without going any further in that little visual, I think it's really important that you say a little bit's good enough.
I
A little bit's
struggle.
good enough.
I struggle at times. I'm reading through a book that I am interested in, that I've chosen, but then all of a sudden I'll read a paragraph, realize that I have no clue what I just read. My mind slipped,
Right.
went somewhere else.
Right.
One, does that ever happen to you, or any tips to staying more focused within your reading?
Yeah, more focused is probably too harsh for me because I usually bring crayons to any discussion. I, so my point is that I'm forgiving on what I don't know, and I just keep going. I think that it's too easy to set a book down, and I'll just skip it and just keep moving, and then something down the road will bring me back to that, and I might not understand the whole paragraph, but it helps me understand the word. It's like if I don't know a word, then I Google it, and then I go to the definition. That may take more time, but then knowing that word, I got it. That word was a trigger that opened the door to my understanding. So it depends on the method, and everybody's a little bit different, but I would, definitely tell people, don't be so hard on yourself, and move forward in the book, even skip chapters, and then hit 3 chapters, and tell somebody, whomever that is, down the road, yeah, no, I only read 3 chapters of it. He was a little, or she was too highfalutin for me. I didn't get it on me, but here's what I liked. And then that takes you to a place, and maybe that person shares with you what their insights were, and you've stolen literally an understanding, because I think the understanding is more important than the fact that you don't understand certain things.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.